The movie begins late 1987. Adele Wheeler is checking her son Henry Wheeler in front of a mirror. His clothes appear smaller as he is growing taller. They decide to go buy some clothes at the shop. They arrive at the store and Henry asks his mother if he can check out the new issues of the comics. She agrees and tells him to not wander off too much. Just as Henry is about to check the comic section, a suspicious guy approaches Henry. That man asks Henry for help, and he cannot say no as the man is very persistent. Henry calls his mom and asks if he can help this man. Adele responds with they're busy and cannot help him. But the man grabs Henry by the neck and out of fear, Adele agrees to help the man. They go back to the parking lot and gets in the car, as the man sits with Henry at the backseat. Adele drives home with the suspicious person and Henry. And as they arrive home, the man helps them carry the. He informs them that he will be gone by midnight as he will escape by following the train tracks near their backyard. Adele opens the TV, and it flashes a picture of the murderer named Frank that is on the loose. The police advise the people near the area to be careful and report anyone suspicious. Frank informs them that his murder case is just an accident and will not hurt them. He ties Adele to a seat to cover the fact that they will be nursing him till he recovers. Frank asks Henry to help him cook some food. He grabs some pork and beans. He firmly chops and cooks it for their meal. Henry is cautious of the man as he does not know what his next move will be. He follows his orders and does not ask any more questions. Adele is still not sure of what is happening and just follows Frank's orders as they do not want any trouble. That night, several police cars are surveying the area and it alarms Frank and he covers every window and door that may show his location. Frank unties Adele and lays down at the sofa to rest. The following morning, Frank makes breakfast for Henry and Adele. Henry notices the newspaper has Frank at the front page. Frank explains once more that there is more to that story and shouldn't worry one bit. Adele wakes up and bites at the bread and immediately likes it. Frank and Henry goes around the house to fix some broken areas and furniture. Frank is not telling them that he is a nice person, but he shows them that he is. He also teaches Henry to play baseball to pass some time together. Adele notices and she is glad as they look like a father and son bonding. Later that day, Adele stitches the tear on Frank's pants and suddenly, Jervis knocks at their door. Frank grabs her and hides at the side. He tells Henry to go check the door and tell them that his mother is not there. Henry opens the door and talks to Jervis. He asks Henry where is his mom and hands him a bundle of peaches. He also tells him that there is a dangerous man on the loose, and they should be careful. After he leaves, Frank releases Adele and Henry gives them the peaches. Frank bites a peach and notices that it is almost ripe. Adele tells him to throw the ones that will be ripe soon. But he remembers that they can bake a pie with those ingredients. He teaches Henry and Adele to make a peach pie. Henry notices that his mother's hand is shaking after some past events, and it shakes every day to the point that she cannot control it anymore. After baking and eating the pie, Henry is playing his console at the living room and notices the reflection of the screen that his mother and Frank are getting very close. Frank stands up and tells that he needs to go now and escape the authorities, but Adele insists that he stays until his wounds heal. He decides to stay a bit longer till his wounds closes. The next morning, Adele teaches Frank how to dance and enjoys the moment. They all agree to make some nice dinner and Henry goes to the market to buy some ingredients for the dinner. Henry goes back home and forgets to close the door. He hears the chatter of Frank and Adele. He places the groceries at the table but Evelyn, their neighbor, is finding Adele to leave her paralyzed son Barry. Evelyn explains to her that she will be out and needs someone to take care of Barry. After several discussions, Adele agrees and takes Barry inside while Evelyn leaves. Frank appears and suggests that they can all play catch together at the backyard to pass some time. Dusk arrives and Evelyn's arrives at their front door. Frank hides upstairs. Adele welcomes Evelyn and they talk for some time, but the TV broadcasts Frank once more and Barry copies it and repeatedly shouts, "Frank." Evelyn gets mad at him and slaps his face to make him stop. She grabs Barry to leave as she feels shame towards Adele. Next morning, Frank and Adele asks Henry if he can research about Prince Edward Island at Kenyatta in the library for a place to move to. He grabs his bike and goes to the library to read the books pertaining to Canada. In there, he meets Eleanor, and they engage a small talk. Eleanor mentions about how Frank is causing tension with his mother and son relationship, basing it from her experience with her parents. He goes back that night. Henry recalls all the things in Eleanor from the library a while ago. His biological father calls him outside for their weekly bonding time together with his stepfamily. They eat at a local pub and his dad is proud about him being a 7th grader now. After the talk about school and their plans, they leave and enjoy the remaining bonding time together on the way home. Meanwhile, Henry's dad drops him off the front yard of the house. But as Henry is about to enter the house, he hears a loud cha-cha music coming from the kitchen. He sees Frank and Adele dancing cha-cha and scolds them as they need to hide Frank, but accidentally makes too much noise that may catch everyone's attention. Before Henry goes upstairs, his mom asks him to stay and listen to her. She discusses to him that they want to migrate to Canada to have a fresh start with Frank, but he misinterprets it and remembers what Eleanor said before pertaining to the tension that will occur once Frank and Adele lives together. He immediately thinks that they will leave him once they migrate to Canada. Adele and Frank clears it out for him as he will be part of the family, and no one will be leaving him alone. Adele and Frank packs up their things and puts the unnecessary things in a box to dispose, while Henry is bringing almost every item that he owns. Frank notices him and tells him to reduce it to half as the car will immediately be full of boxes. After Henry finishes fixing his belongings, he goes out of the house and rides his bike to meet up with Eleanor. They talk while they're walking down a bridge. She asks Henry about the details of their trip, but he accidentally overshares that they are going to be migrating to Canada at the first day of school. She speculates that the guy that whom his mother is having a relationship is Frank the murderer. They continue to walk down a path leading to the rocks near the river. She continues to ask question to Henry, what if they let you leave, so they can leave without you like Bonnie and Clyde did at the movie. He imagines the scenario with a police car chase as well police shoots, and the result is his mom and Frank dying at their car. Back at the Wheeler household, Frank falls on his feet as his wounds from escaping the prison opens and needs medication. Adele suggests buying medicine from the pharmacy, but Frank notices that she begins to shake more in panic. Adele enters the car and sits idly in it before attempting to the engine. She cannot control her shaking, but Frank notices her and stops her from going. Frank gets more curious about what is happening to her once she starts to shake and get nervous. She shares about that after a few years of giving birth to Henry, Adele and her husband attempts to make a sibling for Henry. But one day her body experiences cramps and releases a lot of liquid coming from her body, including the fetus. They go to a doctor to report the incident, but the doctor tells them to try once more as she is still young back then. After some time, the baby is building up at her body, but the cramps and liquid discharge happens once more. This occurs 3 more times and her body starts to grow weaker. Every time she sees a pregnant lady, her body remembers the feeling of giving birth and is like malfunctioning to the point that she cannot properly move on her own. After the story, they both get off the car first and proceeds to sit at the bench at the front yard. Before the sun sets, they finish cleaning the house, leaving no dirty spot behind. Henry composes a letter for his father regarding to their migration to Canada. Finally, a complete flashback of Frank of his partner Mandy and his child is clear as day. In that memory, he asks her about who the real father of the baby is as he catches her going to a bar with another man and her friend. It upsets Frank, making him aggressive. He pushes her towards a vent tube, hitting her head that kills her. While their baby drowns, just before they get their daughter out of the bathtub. The next morning, Henry goes to his father's house and puts his letter to the mailbox. He leaves right after leaving the letter. But a patrolling police officer notices him and asks what is he doing early in the morning. He explains that he is on his way home after getting something from his father's house. The police officer offers to escort him home to make sure he returns home safely. The officer insists to escort him, and Henry accepts after the officer jokingly say to him, "Don't make me arrest you." The officer drops him at the front yard of their house and the officer accompanies him towards the garage where Adele is. He offers his aide to carry a large box and insists to help once more. Adele accepts his offer in a sign of respect. Frank hides at the second floor, observing silently as he worries that the officer may capture him. After the officer is done helping, he leaves them be as his intentions are only to help them. Henry and Adele enters the front door and Frank tells them that they need to leave as soon as possible. He tells Adele to get the money at the bank with Henry and return immediately. Adele and Henry arrives at the bank and asks the bank teller that she will withdraw a large sum of money, but the bank teller informs her that the manager needs to approve of this and calls him to interview Adele. She panics and shakes, but Henry is there to support her. He tells the manager, "We're like Bonnie and Clyde," as he explains that they will move to another house with a lot of money at hand. The manager laughs and lets Adele withdraw the money and they leave afterwards. While the two are outside, Evelyn barges in the house to give Adele some bread, but to her surprise, it is only Frank in there. He introduces himself as a local plumber and no one is home yet. He also tells her that they will be gone for a while. Evelyn decides to wait Frank to clean the pan and give to her and leaves. But as soon as Adele and Henry arrives, a sound of siren is coming from their front door. Frank ties up Adele and Henry to hide the fact that they're his accomplices that are helping him hide for some time now. The police cuffs him up and takes him to the station with a new violation of kidnapping. The movie ends with a time skip of many years after the arrest of Frank. Henry grows as a famous pie maker. And after some time, a letter arrives at their home and the sender is Frank. His letter says that he is proud of him for growing out to be a fine man. He informs them that he will be out of the prison as his sentence will end soon. He wishes to meet with Adele to live with her for the rest of his life. Adele and Frank meets in the front yard and hugs each other, and Henry is glad that his mother won't be alone as Frank will accompany her and love her till they both perish.